Welcome to Education in Time of War. I'm Rachel Raz, and together with me is Samantha Vinokor-Meinrath. She's working at the Jewish Education Project, and we're going to learn a little bit about the Jewish Education Project, some of the inspiring education they're doing in related to Israel education, and what they've done after October 7th. And today is March 7th. It's actually 5 months exactly since the beginning of the war. And for our audience that are just joining us, we are referring to the war in Israel that was started by Hamas terror organization on October 7. This war is still taking place. Tens of thousands of people are displaced and they can't go back to their home. There's over 1,200 people that were killed, murdered, and we still, as of today, 134 hostages are still in the hands of Hamas. The youngest one, I have to say, is a little bit over a year. His name is Kfir in Hebrew, which means baby, like lion cub. And I do hope that the next time that I record this, it will be over, that maybe this will be the last one, that the war will end and we won't need to do that. I started education in time of war to, first of all, preserve some of the inspiring work that is happening around the world and in Israel, and also to hopefully give tools to other people to deal and to think about what to do in a time of war, not just in related to Israel, but in other places around the globe. How do we work together to adapt and change, and maybe not just during war, but extreme situation in other places. So again, Samantha, thank you very much for taking the time and joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me and for all of the work that you've been doing to have these conversations.
Yeah, thank you. And tell us a few words. First of all, what's your official title at the Jewish Education Project? And what is Jewish Education Project for those that are not familiar with that?
Amazing. So hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Vinokor-Meinrath, as you heard. My official title is I am the Managing Director of Identity, Ideas, and Adolescence at the Jewish Education Project. What that means is I oversee our national work on Israel education, Jewish peoplehood education, anti-Semitism, and our thought leadership work as well in a bunch of different areas. I'm truly privileged to work at an amazing organization and within an amazing team. The Jewish Education Project, for those who do not know, is a New York-based national Jewish nonprofit organization focused on delivering professional development for Jewish educators, working with learners, in K-12 educational environments. We work with early childhood educators, congregational schools, those in the part-time Jewish ed space, whether it's youth movements, camps, that charming and other category, as well as day schools and yeshivot. We really are privileged and honored to serve the breadth and depth of so much of the Jewish community, both in New York, across North America, and now increasingly around the world.
And I had the opportunity to actually listen and participate in some of your workshop, and I highly recommend for those that didn't have the opportunity to take advantage of this. It's high quality and lots of great programs. I know, and you mentioned that some of your work is related to Israel education of the Jewish Education Project. Can you tell us what you have done maybe prior to October 7, and then we will touch later on how it changed after October 7. But what was the regular, or if there is any regular work about Israel education?
Sure. So what's interesting is part of what I can say is our October 6th Israel education, most of the theory is still the same for us. How all of this looks, the intensity of the work that we're doing has obviously changed and transformed to meet the needs of a changed community in a transformational period of time for the worldwide Jewish community. But our overall approach to Israel education has not really changed, in the sense that we believe that at the heart of a meaningful Israel educational experience are Israel educators who are able to be both knowledgeable, skilled, and also nuanced in their approach to education. What we were doing on October 6th and before was providing meaningful professional development for educators who wanted to explore what does it mean to hug and wrestle with Israel? How do we meet the complexities of Israel in this moment? Not sure what that was. How do we meet the complexities of Israel in this moment and beyond? How do we meet learners where they are along a lifelong Jewish journey? And we have a belief and an understanding that Israel is a key component of the complex modern Jewish self and experience and one's lifelong Jewish journey. So we are charged with equipping and empowering educators to feel confident in exploring Israel, to be vulnerable when it comes to talking about Israel with their learners. We do it through cohort-based professional development, through individual conversations, through thought leadership work, and through different like very practical tachlis webinars and hands-on learning opportunities, all of which we were doing on October 6th. And obviously, again, now it's taken on a different urgency and a different scale.
And probably we can post later on the website.
Yes.
And do you have any like newsletter or anything that people can get updates about upcoming events or other things like that?
Absolutely, yes. And I'll put it all into our chat. I'm putting here now the overall theory of Israel education. So what it says is part of our mission statement in this area, and then also a link to the Jewish Educator Portal. So the portal is this amazing tool that we are privileged to have, where it posts all of our different professional development events and opportunities, but also resources, different lesson plans or podcasts or videos or old webinar recordings, things that people are able to take, some of them created by members of our team, many of them by our amazing partners, as well as educators working in the field. And they're able to utilize them in your own teaching and in the work that everyone is doing, both in this space and beyond.
Excellent. And I'm sharing some of these pages so viewer can see and they can join and they can learn from that. But as much as you say that nothing, or not much change about the philosophy of teaching about Israel from September 6 to September 7, I know that when we spoke earlier, you did mention Israel changed. American Jewish Jewry and American and Jewish community around the world change. I would also argue that the world changed, the way we see the protest, and you're in New York and we see what happened in Columbia University and some other in street of different towns. And I know I'm located in the Boston area at Harvard and other places, and with the hearing of the head of some of these universities. So we know that things changed. And you said that at the Jewish Education Project, taking all of this, there is an understanding that Israel education needs to change.
Yes.
So can you share with us, I know that in the beginning of the war, you offered lots of webinar and meetings for different groups. Maybe you can share a little bit about that. And later on, I know that you are now shifting and moving to taking groups of educators to Israel, and we can talk about that. But please, if you can start with what you did in the beginning. I know that you convene all of the educators.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, definitely, while I can at once say that our theory of Israel education, it was timeless enough to meet this really timely moment. Of course, the world has changed. Who we were as individual Jews and as a Jewish community and as a community of educators on October 6th is no longer who we are. The needs of our learners and of their families have fundamentally changed when they've had to grapple with what it means to feel vulnerable as Jews, many of them perhaps for the first time, or at least for the first time at this scale. There's been an awakening of fear, but also an awakening of Jewish identity and what it means to be part of the Jewish people. I think anyone who in the last, can't believe we have to say 5 months, has had a moment where they've said we, maybe for the first time, whether it's, what are we doing? Are we going into Gaza? What are we doing? Are we going into Gaza? No matter what tone of voice, no matter what the inflection is, seeing themselves as we, as part of a Jewish people, where the actions of Israel are part of a North American or a worldwide diaspora Jewish identity, and vice versa, where we're feeling connected to one another through shared pain as well as shared joy, and moments of resonance in those ways is a tremendous, again, peoplehood awakening and inflection point for so many Jews. I'll say when I woke up in the morning on October 7th, I had no concept of the scale of what was unfolding. And I think that was true for many North Americans, just based on like our time zone and when we woke up. I have a toddler, so I am up early in the mornings. And my husband had said to me, something's happening in the South. My husband is Israeli. My family is Israeli. We spend a lot of time in Israel and we follow Israeli news incredibly closely. So he said, something's happening in the South. I said, okay, great. Like there's something happening in the South on a, not irregular basis. I texted a dear friend of mine who lives on one of the kibbutzim in Otef Aza, in a way that will probably haunt me to some degree forever, because I sent him a message in WhatsApp saying, hey, not to be that American, but are you alive? He's alive. But it took about 12 hours to get a response, something that has never happened in our friendship and that I obviously would never have sent had I recognized that this wasn't a rocket, but an overwhelming massacre and, again, world-shifting, ideology-shifting moment. As soon as I read through a few more of the headlines and started to realize this is a thing, our team was equipped to spring into action. And one thing that we talk about a lot is we don't want to be good at crisis response. Nobody actually wants to be good at crisis response. And yet we were equipped to be crisis responders on behalf of the community of Jewish educators, which is a tremendous privilege. No other generation of educators has ever been asked to do what the Jewish educators of today have been asked to do and expected to do. If we think about the history of pogroms, because I'm going to use that language of what occurred on October 7th was a pogrom against the Jewish people. When we look at the poem from Nachman Bialik in The City of Slaughter, which he wrote after the Kishinev pogrom, the poem was written a year after the events had taken place. It took him a year to travel, to be commissioned to write, to do research, to gather information, to speak with survivors, and ultimately to figure out what was the meaning making that he was going to use his gift to offer the world. And he wrote this now iconic poem in The City of Slaughter. And a lot of, in those early days, the famous verses of what it means to be in a city of slaughter, as the images and videos were coming out, were holding very, very closely for me. A Jewish educator on October 7th, a Jewish institution on October 7th, we didn't get a year to process how am I going to feel about this and what will meaning making look like. On October 8th, you were teaching. On Sunday, October 8th, either you had a Simchat Torah program plan that you needed to figure out, do I stick with my original plan or am I going to do something else? Or if you were like a one-day Chag community, you had a lesson plan. There was something that was supposed to be happening and you were tasked with and responsible for doing meaning making for your learners and for your community within a day. Even if maybe by Sunday you were still like, okay, we're going to do Simchat Torah because we don't know exactly what's happening, and the Jewish people, we persevere and we are not going to not dance with the Torah, especially at this moment of vulnerability. Amazing. By Monday, you needed a crisis response lesson plan. There was no time to be doing this meaning making. The pogrom was literally live streamed. So if you weren't providing commentary and resources right away, you were behind. And that's ultimately what we jumped in to be able to support, to recognize that our Jewish educators needed new vocabulary and new tools. We needed to remember what the best practices are when it comes to trauma and our learners. How do we have these difficult conversations with them? What do we do now that so much of this, again, is timeless in terms of hatred towards the Jewish people, but also really timely, that remember in that first week, there was a conversation of, should we be keeping kids off of social media? Because these videos are about to come out from Hamas, and these are things that nobody should ever see, because nobody needs to see this level of trauma. But at the same time, we're not keeping kids off of social media. So how do we equip them to encounter what is going to be shared in a meaningful way? So we started working, again, pretty much round the clock, immediately, having those initial conversations, and looking at what is the professional development that is needed. Both for Israel educators, those of us who this is already a space where we exist and can spring into action, and also for the many, many Jewish educators out there who would never have self-identified and said, Israel education is part of my portfolio. But as Jewish educators, they were tasked with becoming Israel educators overnight, within moments, and needed support and deserved the utmost of respect and kavod for how they were able to make meaning at the drop of a hat, in a way that, again, was totally unexpected and unprecedented.
And I can tell you, Samantha, I also a member of Temple Emuna in Lexington, and the director of the school mayor participated in some of your webinar. It was, and I know from like firsthand how valuable it was and how important it was to get the support. So I would say, the contra of now we see this like pogrom in real time and on social media and this, but we're also very fortunate to have this Zoom, and since even though you're in New York, educators from around the globe can get access to this support, which I think it's very important. And also at Temple Emuna, the first week, the first day actually, Mayor also had a conversation with the students. We have a different recording with him about the impact, and he mentioned some of your work. So Samantha, I know that the beginning it was really day to day and unfolding, and you mentioned that in America we didn't know what's really going on in Israel. Also in Israel, like I spoke to people there, and it was when war or something like this happened, when pogrom happened, when it's evolving, and even now after 5 months, people from outside look and said ceasefire on this, and without really understanding the complexity of what it actually means. It's very easy to sit far away from a war when you feel comfortable sitting with a tea and in a warm place, and of course when you see the very sad picture of every suffering, every child, from it doesn't matter from which side you are, it's very painful. War are terrible. That there is no, in any part of the world, and so it's good to understand what's going on. And I know this will lead me to the next question, that there was one thing for us to sit here and study about it, talk about it, hear about it in Israel. Now you're in a different phase. You want to take people there. So tell me a little bit about it. Like, what's the vision? You just came back from Israel, from taking the first group. So maybe you can share also what's the vision, what you're planning, and maybe some reflection and some highlight and something that surprised you or from this experience.
Absolutely. So I had the privilege of going to Israel for the first time after October 7th in November, with a small group of leaders in the field of Jewish and Israel education from around the world. We went for really the purpose of bearing witness. We wanted to and needed to see that changed Israel, to be with our Israeli colleagues. They were our partners really from the beginning, from day one when we were doing this immediate gathering. It was not just those of us based in North America, but it was really also together with our Israeli peers and friends. And we wanted to see them, to show them support, and to make sure that they felt you're not alone ever in this work. And we also needed to think about, again, we've said the Jewish people are forever changed. There's a vulnerability. There is an awakening of self and of identity. There is a just new world when it comes to what we're encountering right now. And we knew that Israel education wasn't going to be the same, and Jewish education and travel and so many other elements. So we wanted to see for ourselves. And the biggest takeaway from that initial quick trip in November was Jewish educators need to be in Israel. There are those who need to go for practical reasons, that if you're going to be bringing a group of learners to Israel within the coming months, we wanted to make sure that the educators had a chance to go first, so they weren't having their own trauma and processing for that first time seeing some of the sites that we've been able to see together with their learners, but they could have done their own internal work beforehand. And also for those who Israel travel is not a part of their regular job portfolio, but again, they've somehow been tasked with this tremendous burden and honor and responsibility of meaning making, and to give them a chance to see Israel, to encounter Israel with Israelis, to see what has stayed the same, and what is forever changed, and what is in this moment of like liminal time and space, we hope not forever changed, and that we'll be able to come back once this war is over, and once the Chatufim, once the hostages are, God willing, returned. But we wanted to be able to do that, to build networks of Jewish and Israel educators who could rely on one another to be co-creating these moments of meaning, and the content that this moment calls for, through that which they're seeing. We went with a few different lenses: that of Jewish peoplehood education, that of complexity, and making sure that we're showing a multifaceted Israel, even in this moment, especially in this moment, and that of that which is practical and adaptable. So making sure that there are tangible takeaways that an educator is able to feel empowered to go back to their home community, wherever that is, and to implement something that's different. So this doesn't just remain, I think I'm, one of the biggest culprits out there. I have an amazing professional development experience. I come away with all of these new amazing ideas of all the things that I'm going to do. And then I get back to my inbox and my to-do list, and it's like, oh yeah, I had some awesome ideas. And we don't want that to be the case. We really want to create an arc of learning and implementation. We have amazing partners in this work. In addition to the Jewish Education Project, the I Center, M Squared, the Jewish Agency for Israel, Route One, Prisma, ARJE and HUC, and Foundation for Jewish Camp are all really key, proud partners in this work. We also have our amazing funders, UJA Federation of New York, the Jim Joseph Foundation, and the Maimonides Fund, all working with us on this. Each group that goes to Israel is coming under this shared banner. We're calling it Mishlachot Arevut, which is delegations of responsibility, because again, we do feel deeply responsible as educators, as shepherds of the next generations, or this generation's, quite frankly, whatever generation one is part of, Jewish identity and meaning making, and how we connect to this greater story of Am Yisrael and the Jewish people. There are, so the different groups, there are some who are going as more role alike. So for instance, Prisma is just coming back from a trip. I believe it actually finishes today as we record, specifically for day school educators. Foundation for Jewish Camp, of course, then they are taking camp professionals. But the Jewish Education Project buses are a little bit broader in many ways, where I had the opportunity for this first group to bring an amazing cohort of individuals from the day school world, the part-time Jewish ed world, particularly that of congregational education, and those who fall into the and other teen space and youth movement space, and Jewish nonprofit education space as well. And that's what'll continue with the buses that are scheduled to go every month between now and June.
So how many are you, at least at the moment, is planned to take? And maybe later you can share some highlights from your recent trip.
So there are going to be 13 buses overall at this point. We have far already exceeded the demand, which is a amazing place to be in. And for any of us who this work is that of our souls, we want to be able to bring as many people as possible. So hopefully there will be the opportunity to continue and to do more, because we know that each individual who comes is a community that we really have the potential to change. I'm already seeing from the people who I came back with from this bus that just finished in February, the impact that it's having when I'm getting sent the lesson plans that are being written, the blog posts that are being posted, the sermons that are being given. It's really, really powerful to see how everyone is doing that meaning making work and that transmission work of saying, I know that my whole community is not going to see what I have seen and to be where I have been, but I am that, text person, as it were, that I am changed by this experience, and I can be a conduit for their change as well. So I'll talk a little bit about, so what exactly did we do? And what does that mean? We had a number of different site-based priorities for each trip, things that we want them to experience on the ground in Israel. And then we have overall existential pedagogic questions that we're eager and excited to answer, or to co-create the answers to, I should say. So each group has the opportunity to travel to Israel South, to both Otef Aza, the Gaza envelope region, which is where the attack was really centered on October 7th, to the site of the Nova Music Festival, some to some of the kibbutzim that are still open and accepting delegations and visitors, and to the various cities and towns. The group that I was with, we went to the city of Ofakim, where we had the opportunity to be given a story, to be told the story of what happened to this community and in this community on October 7th by fellow educators, but even more impressively by their students. They are having their high school students learn to share the stories of what happened to their community on October 7th. And they're telling a story of a city of heroes. That's the new now tagline of Ofakim is we're a city of heroes. And they're telling stories about heroism. You walk through the streets and they tell you about both who died in these different places, but also how did they die? Who were they protecting? Who were they saving? What were the steps being taken by different members of their community to fight terror in these really powerful ways and to protect their community? And hearing those stories is both powerful in the moment where, it's any powerful story. What these individuals did is unbelievable, and what they've suffered as a community is heart-wrenching. But then also as an educator to see there's a narrative being built here. These students are learning we are heroes. This is a city where we're learning about what it means to inculturate this idea of resilience, so that this isn't a story of victimhood. And this isn't a story that they are going to remember and pass on and be told about what happened to us, but it's what did we do? So I think seeing that was so powerful. I'm going to share.
And this is very much the Jewish way. For those of us that are not familiar with some of the Jewish philosophy and life and all of that, the word zachor, remember, it's very much rooted. We remember. But we are not raising our children or ourselves to be a victim. Exactly. So it's how do we move on? We are going to celebrate the holiday of Purim very soon, which is also a similar story from the time of the Persian. In a couple of months, we're going to celebrate Passover. It's our history, through in Egypt, through biblical time. But this is part of it. We remember, we think about it, we teach it to the next generation. And this is also part of the trauma that we are carrying with us, but we are learning to grow stronger.
Absolutely. And so speaking to that, I think the concept of Zachor feels so resonant right now. This is a picture that I took at the site of the Nova Music Festival outside of Re'im. And this is, again, the festival where there was really a massacre on October 7th. I believe it's over 300 people were either killed or kidnapped from those who were there celebrating and partying and living their best lives, for whatever that means. And what struck me is the memorials that have popped up at this site, and that concept of Zachor, of using things that feel really Jewish, whether it's the flags or the rocks, the candles that are there, but also things that are new and so personal to each individual here. I often talk about how in Hebrew, there's not really a word for history. The word is like historia, which isn't like really a Hebrew word. I think it's Greek. But that the word is zachor, of memory, because even if I didn't experience this firsthand, or I don't know these people, it's like at the Pesach Seder, it is as though we came out of Egypt ourselves, and we want to see ourselves in these stories and to help our learners see themselves as part of the Jewish people, where this isn't something abstract that happened to somebody else, but this happened to us and to our people and to our community. But we were also discussing how this is like a moment of really liminal time and space where it's not history because that's somebody else's. It's not even yet memory. This is literally happening and still unfolding right now. When we were at the Nova site, we could hear the artillery in Gaza, and things that, you never necessarily want to think about, but they were describing how it's a different sound when it's defensive artillery, and that's what we were hearing. This isn't an attack, but it's IDF artillery protecting us, but you can hear, you like feel every boom kind of in your chest somehow, and to say this is still happening. The Jewish people are equipped with rituals for marking time when the thing has already ended. We know how to do a Shiva, for example. We know how to do a Shloshim. We know how to say Kaddish. But especially when it comes to the Chatufim, when it comes to the hostages, we're still in this liminal space. We're not sitting Shiva. We're not moving forward because everything is still unfolding at this moment. We're not ready to say that this is memory just yet. And that's a whole new challenge for us.
And this is what some people don't really understand, especially if you don't have family or close friends that you listen to the news all the time. You think, it happened October 7, 5 months ago. Why is it still going on? And they don't understand that there are still rockets being shot from Gaza. There are actually lots of rockets being shot now from Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
There are rockets from Yemen. It's still everybody live still in fear. And of course, the life of the hostages. So people that are not as connected, or they're not listening to the news, the Israeli news, or like I get my news also from my family, in real time, they don't really understand that this is still going on. And again, for those of us listening to us, and you're sitting in New York and in Washington, D.C. or Boston and other places, and it's very easy to come and tell people what to do when you're not afraid, when you're not worried for your life, when your loved ones are not kidnapped and underground being tortured, for 5 months. So I encourage everybody to take like a deep breath and learn more or connect more with the people on the ground before you come and say an opinion that are not really based on knowing people that living there. And I say it for everyone. The other thing, Samantha, before you give other example, you mentioned earlier the word peoplehood, that some people maybe are not as familiar, or the word in Hebrew, amiyut, which is very much, and I don't know if there's any comparison to other nations, but in the Jewish, with the Jewish group, we look at ourselves as one big family. And that's why when somebody is hurt, or somebody needs our help, or somebody is doing something great, we always feel like pride. Or fear. So, and I know that it was very important for you to connect the educator to this concept.
Yes, absolutely. So the concept of Jewish peoplehood, in some ways is an age-old one. In most ways, I think is an age-old one, but that we haven't necessarily given such vocabulary to up until this past generation or so. Jewish peoplehood is this inherent and intrinsic connection between Jews from both around the world and throughout history. It's that, why do we say we? Why do I get excited when I'm in an airport and I see someone who's either speaking Hebrew or wearing a kippah or somehow otherwise shows up as Jewish, and we don't know each other? We're never going to see each other again. We're not even going to speak in this moment, but I want to pull out my own star or have a conversation in Hebrew loudly enough. Maybe I'm faking it even on the phone so that way we can lock eyes and be like, we're in the same club. We're on the same team. It's a tribal instinct in some ways, and it's also expansive. I think it's a lot to explore. Being part of the Jewish people is not even necessarily exclusive to those who fully identify as Jewish. I was having an amazing conversation the other day about what it means for non-Jewish spouses and partners, for example, to feel part of the Jewish people, to feel like this is a we moment and we're in this together. And the field of Jewish peoplehood education is growing and expanding, and there's really amazing, amazing thought leadership as well as practical implementation happening. But I think that's what the pull is. Why, like, Manishtana, we said we have Pesach coming up. Manishtana, why is this different? Why does this hit me differently? Why does it hit me differently when I hear that it's a Jewish dentist in California who's been murdered because I'm part of him and he's part of me, even though we've never met, and it's devastating. And that particularism does not preclude universalism and saying exactly what you said, every loss of life, every trauma, we can feel, and we should feel. We should not lose our humanity for others and whomever the other is in this moment. But to recognize the uniqueness of being part of Am Yisrael and part of the Jewish people. So that was one of the things that we focus on, both, I would say, explicitly and implicitly. Explicitly in terms of we're doing workshops centered around Jewish peoplehood, and that's a clear, distinct pedagogic goal. But then also to say implicitly, what does it mean to create community around the Jewish people? To say that we're part of Am Yisrael. We read the poem from Yehuda Amichai, The Tourists. And why is it important for us to not feel like we're tourists in Israel, but that this is ours in a way that any other place, any other country would not be in that same way? So a lot of conversations in that regard.
Yeah. So do you have other example that you want to share from the recent
Absolutely.
seminar?
So in addition to traveling to the South, I'll just kind of give an overview and then I can share a few more specific things. We spent a lot of time in Tel Aviv, both at Kikar Chatufim, Hostage Square, which is the space that has really become the center of the movement to bring the hostages home. It's where many of the families and loved ones of the hostages are sitting day and night in solidarity with their loved ones and protest on behalf of their loved ones, demonstrating for them and telling their stories. A lot of art has sprung up in this space as well. That's powerful and awful and deeply moving. We were able to meet with members of Israel's civil society who sprang into action to take on leadership roles and to help support the country at these moments of extreme vulnerability and to fill the tremendous gaps that were present. We went to visit an unrecognized Bedouin village and to hear about the impact that the war has had on their community. We visited Mount Herzl. We met with the relatives of hostages and of fallen soldiers. I could go, and. I mean, there's just so many different things. I want to share a art piece that we saw when we were on a graffiti tour in Tel Aviv that was specifically focused on post-October 7th graffiti. So this is an image that's on a wall. It says "Never Again," which of course you could see the never is crossed out. It's an throwback to a famous photo from the Holocaust of a young boy standing with his hands up, but now instead of the yellow star on his coat, we have the yellow ribbon that has become a symbol of the movement to bring the hostages home and not to forget about the hostages. And of course, we have a Hamas fighter standing behind him. There were so many different layers in each piece that we saw. Is this a Holocaust moment? Is that the illusion and the allegory that we want to draw? Are we, victim in that same way with the hands held up? And what does it mean to be fighting a war, and a just war, and a war where there is a question of what it means to be Jews with power, not like the boy that this is throwing us back towards. But then also there is definitely that feeling of, on October 7th, that we were victims. And how do we make meaning and square away what it means to both be victims and to be strong and to be survivors and to be resilient? I think that goes back to the Ofakim narrative of heroism and not victimhood, while still recognizing the challenge that this poses to Israeli society at this moment.
And this is definitely something that I know that I and many other people had in their mind. My grandma was at Bergen-Belsen, a concentration camp. Many of my neighbors growing up in Israel lost many of their loved ones at the Holocaust, and it kind of came back, it was, and that's what lots of people also don't understand, that this is like a collective trauma of the Jewish people, the Holocaust, and the never again. And here we are, standing in this situation. And I love that you're using this graffiti in so many, to just have this deep conversation. And I think that we are missing this complexity in general in education today, not just related to the war, not just related to Israel, but everywhere, in the world, when we are thinking about having conversation with students about any topic. We are mostly like covering, doing check and not uncovering and going into the complexity and the deepness. And in some way, if we have educators listening to us, I truly encourage you to any topic that you are doing, if you can learn it firsthand, like you are giving this opportunity for people to go and listen firsthand. Because I hear so many people said, this is actually didn't happen. Or I see people posting on social media, on Instagram, this is fake. And I said, like, no, it's not. My niece lost 4 of her friends. My good friend lost a family of 2 parents and 3 young children. You can't tell me that it's fake. So people sending, writing those things, it's upsetting because they're not really searching for truth. I don't know what they're searching, but it's definitely not bringing any goodness or any progress to the world.
No, it's upsetting and it's really dangerous. Holocaust denial is definitely a thing, but it took a long time to become a thing. It took 20, 30 years for Holocaust denial to take hold and to take root in the world. October 7th denial started on October 7th. And it's both fascinating and disturbing from an intellectual perspective and enraging from an emotional one, to say that you saw it, you watched it, or you had the opportunity to. I don't know if everyone did. I was doing a lot of doom scrolling, so I can only speak to my own experience. But this, I think a lot of it comes from this double standard of this burden of responsibility and burden of proof. And to say, well, where is the proof that this happened? Not that there isn't ample and substantial proof, but also to then ask the question, would you have asked this of any other minority community when, when the young women were kidnapped by Boko Haram, for example? Was anyone asking for proof or asking, why did this happen or how did this happen? No, we as the world were up in outrage because this is unacceptable that this happened. And then when we see the people ripping down the signs for the hostages, the kidnapped signs that have been sprung up all over the world, I want to ask on some level, what are you doing? Is it that uncomfortable to see these beautiful, innocent faces and to reckon with the reality of the world that they have been held for 5 months, and that we don't know what's happening to them? Are you this hateful? Are you this angry? So I think one of the there's many next steps for the Jewish people. Part of it is going to be, what does it mean to reconcile with the anti-Semitism that for many years wasn't necessarily gone, but at least it was below the surface enough that we could feel comfortable and confident in a way that in the last 5 months, so many have had to make choices that really come from a place of vulnerability to anti-Semitism. There's this question again of Jewish peoplehood, what it means to feel connected to Am Yisrael. And then ultimately, I think one of the main things that I hope emerges from this liminal space that we're in is that of a conversation of Jewish pride. And how do we cultivate and inculcate in our young people a sense of Jewish pride, and what that means, how that manifests, and how it will inform the way that they're able to carry themselves in the world.
So Samantha, I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Not challenge, I don't know. The Jewish Education Project, by its name, is Jewish, focused on the Jewish community, Jewish educators. I think it was overdue to take lots of Jewish educators to Israel. I was fortunate for over a decade to direct the Boston-Haifa connection for early childhood educators. And I took over the years many groups to Israel and hosted many Israelis here. So I saw the impact. And this group were Jewish and non-Jewish mixed over the years. And there was no doubt that it was very, very meaningful for those participants. I also see issues that we have now with teacher union, like in Massachusetts. We have like superintendent, we have many of our public school, we have issues. Is the Jewish Education Project that is going to suggest or maybe open some of these to public school teachers? Because I think that we need more people to be educated.
So stay tuned is my unsatisfactory answer. We this year, before October 7th, it just everything ramped up a notch. But as of September this year, we've been working specifically in New York at first, because that is our home region, with educators and students and families in non-Jewish spaces. So in public schools, as well as independent schools and faith-based schools of other faith tradition, so all of the educational environments outside of the Jewish community. This is really our first really exciting and meaningful foray into working with educators and administrators and other stakeholders, parents in particular, in those spaces. And we recognize, yes, it's a different need when it comes to what they need from an Israel experience, but same page, and we're eager to be part of and thoughtful partners in that work as well.
Because one of the things also, I have another project, it's called the Space Torah Project, about a Jewish astronaut and his journey. And I know that I actually bring it to many also spaces that are not Jewish. Last week we were at NASA, which was lovely. And as Jewish community, we are about 2% of the population, and most people never met a Jew or don't know what Judaism is about. So I also taking it also as my responsibility as American citizen. How do I bring it more to the knowledge? I always eager to learn about other traditions and other background and to get to know people. I think that's what makes America the unique and very vibrant, I would say, community that I feel honored to be a citizen. But how do we make it as our responsibility also to share Judaism, to share Israel, to share some of our values with the wider community? Because I think that it's very important.
Absolutely. Yes. No, I completely agree. I think I mean, it's not just important. I think it's critical. As you said, we are, less than 2% of the population in the United States, less than, I think it's like 0.2% of the population around the world. Both when it comes to, I mean, altruistically, people should be learning about other people, and that's amazing and a tremendous value add. And we're not going to win our fights by ourselves. We are such a small community, and I think we need to shift the understanding of burden of responsibility. It's not the job of the Jewish community to fix anti-Semitism or to fix anti-Israel sentiment, any more so than any of us would say it's the job of LGBTQ plus individuals to fix homophobia. These are society's problems to fix. It cannot be on the victim or the recipient to also have to bear that burden of weight and responsibility to fix the problem. But unless we're in conversation and in relationship and giving opportunity for people to understand all of these various complexities, it's not going to be on anybody else's radar. So obviously we have a vested interest in doing this work and fixing it. And I'm so honored and privileged to be with you and with so many others, anyone listening, as partners in doing so.
Thank you very much, Samantha. Is there any other question that you want me to ask or any message that you want to give?
My message always is toda rabah, and thank you so much to each of the educators who's out there doing what I really, really believe to be sacred and holy work. I have a very spiritual relationship with what it means to do the work of Jewish education. It is a tremendous honor, and would not be possible without all of the partners and educators who are on the ground every day, building relationships between and with learners and community and text and tradition and innovation, all through this conduit of yourself. So to all of the educators, thank you for all that you do, and really honored to be with you on these journeys.
Thank you so much, Samantha. And again, for our listener, you're listening to Education in Time of War, and learning about the Jewish Education Project and all of the inspiring work they're doing in New York and around the globe. And for all of our listeners, I hope that you learn a few things. Most important things is to learn and to grow and to understand and to listen and to come from a place of wanting to bring good to the world. I think this is the most important things, and it's come through education. So thank you very much, Samantha, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.